Jitin, architect, he is going to talk about common mistakes, failures that you might encounter while deploying CloudStack. Am I right?
Thank you, Dan.
Please welcome Jitin.
Thank you all. I'm one of the cloud architects at Shablue. I started my journey with CloudStack and commercial distributions of CloudStack when I joined Citrix in 2013 as one of the frontline engineers. When Citrix sold the product to Accelerate, I continued there, and recently I joined Shablue. That's about me. So you saw many nice features that are upcoming. You have used very good features with CloudStack. But I believe you all agree that CloudStack has a lot of moving parts. So a lot of operations could fail. Considering from a user perspective, instance deployment as a most used operation, I have listed 15 failure scenarios, common ones, and their most usual causes and some mitigation steps. So anybody who has used CloudStack, I believe, definitely has come across insufficient capacity error. It is a very generic error. There are many variants of it. I have looked at logs for more than 10 years, and most of them as insufficient capacity. It confuses people. There are different variants of it that you can see, but I believe most production systems, they're not due to different reasons, but maybe mostly due to actual capacity. So the way around that is to add more capacity. If there are resources that are occupying your infrastructure that could be deleted, you could remove them. And other way to use avoid hitting this issue is to use resource limits efficiently. So it's a great feature. If you use this resource limits efficiently across accounts, domains, and so on, you could avoid hitting this issue in general. And if you have a good monitoring, definitely that will be of great use to you. These are different variation of insufficient capacity. If you need to deploy an instance, there are chances that you might need to acquire a public IP as well. So in case where a public IP is fully utilized, that is, you have among the ones that you have allocated to the zone, your instance deployment could fail. So in such a case, the obvious solution is to add more public IP addresses in your case. And public IP address as a resource, you could set a resource limit as well. So you could avoid hitting this issue as well. Like any other resource, you could plan your capacity well. So if you know your resource utilization, you could add sufficient IP ranges to avoid hitting this issue that frequently. Like public IP addresses, VLAN is a resource that you need to bring up your network in most cases. If your network needs to be implemented with a new VLAN, and if it's not available, you might be hitting this issue. Similar to public IP addresses, you could extend the VLAN. You could use resource limits on the networks to avoid hitting this issue. And obviously, you could plan your capacity well. If you know how many networks you would need, you could have added the VLANs accordingly. Resource tags, specifically host tags and storage tags, are a great feature in CloudStack to control the VM instance placement on your host. So it gives you a lot of control as an admin. However, there are scenarios where you could make incorrect configurations, such as you must have added a tag to the offering, but they are missing on the resources, such as storage or host. In such scenarios, you might hit your instance deployment failures. There are scenarios where you have tagged the resources, but those tagged resources are fully utilized. So in such scenarios as well, you will hit instance deployment failures. So in either case, you analyze the logs, you identify this issue, you have to review your configuration, update the configuration, or fix the configuration accordingly. There are scenarios where you'll have to add tags to more hosts or add more servers with a similar specification and tag them as well. And your use case no longer requires such complex tagging. Maybe you need to review your configuration and remove the tagging as well if you're hitting this very frequently. Our provisioning with CloudStack helps you with making the best out of your investment. It helps you run as many resources on a physical resource, but you cannot go crazy with it. You have to use realistic values. How do you arrive at realistic values? Before going to production, you do a thorough testing with it. You use your production workloads, similar to production workloads, come up with the realistic values and use them. I have seen people using provisioning values like 50 and surprised, why is it failing? And always, like any infrastructure, keep a sufficient headroom to avoid hitting issues frequently. CloudStack gives you a lot of flexibility in deployment options, such as dedicate a resource to a domain account, resource tagging, affinities, anti-affinities, and so on. So there are choices which doesn't go well together. So you have to make sure you do not present a lot of such options to result in a lot of unnecessary errors. As a user, avoid using mutually exclusive deployment options. This one is a little extension of insufficient capacity, but this is very specific. So this one appears when the hosts are disconnected. If you're using a vSphere-based CloudStack deployment, your vCenter, if it goes down or unavailable due to any reason, that becomes a single point of failure for all of your zone, and you could hit this issue. And if there is no free capacity as well, you could hit this error. So how do we overcome this situation? So you ensure your host, server host, hardware, the software on the hypervisor are in good health. You implement a good monitoring on your hypervisor platform. Ensure there is a free capacity. So on your compute offering, you have specifications such as CPU megahertz and vCPU. And if you deploy an instance and CloudStack deployment planner cannot find a suitable match, you could hit this capability mismatch error as well. This happens mostly when we replace the server hardware with a newer CPU, where the CPU megahertz is different. So if you have, if you had a host with 3,000 megahertz or so, you would have created the compute offering with matching that value, and a newer one may be having a 2,500 megahertz, and you may not have updated. So CloudStack cannot match that, right? So you could use, you could update the offering, use resource tagging, host tagging to ensure you don't hit that issue that well. I mentioned resource limits as a solution earlier, but resource limits itself could lead to issues if you have your admin has configured stringent resource limits rules. So there is no great solution here. You have to increase those resource limits or free up the resources. Null pointer exception is another failure that get any operation. Instance deployment, I'm taking that an example here, so it could affect that as well. Many situations I have seen manual DB changes as a cause of this one. So I used to run internal production cloud with a commercial distribution of CloudStack. So a couple of years. So what we did is we decided we'll not modify the DB at all. And I could say that deployment worked well. Compared to the issues I was handling for the customers, I did not face any issue. So when you're making manual changes, at least make sure you do a thorough testing, avoid as much as possible. And this could happen even if you don't modify a DB due to bugs in the product. So If there must be some fixes available in the newer versions, you could apply them. Otherwise, you could find a fix for yourself or report the bug. Availability and performance of your database is very critical for the availability of your CloudStack control plane. So if your database has any issues such as performance issues, JDBC errors executing certain statement due to different configurations issues, infra issues such as the database server file system is full, CPU is high, anything like that could definitely affect all the operations that you do through the CloudStack management server or APIs or UI. So always make sure you have a good monitoring in place for your database server. Ensure you have a good connectivity between the management servers and the database server. And definitely use a tested and supported MySQL version. Many a times for CloudStack, once you run the instance on the hypervisor, its the async job is completed successfully. It's a successful operation for with respect to CloudStack. But with respect to the user, if the instance is not booting, that's not a successful operation, right? There are scenarios where the instance is deployed fine, but it may not boot. I have seen incorrect guest choice mapping issues with the product, and user selecting incorrect operating system, which didn't go well with the guest OS. Selection of unsupported controller types with respect to the hypervisor and the guest OS combinations that affects the instance booting. And there are scenarios where you have a corrupted template and ISO, depending on the scenario. So based on your situation, you could fix the guest choice mapping. If it's a wrong operating system selection, you could update that and start the virtual machine again. That will fix. If a controller type that is not supported by the guest OS, you could fix that. In case of a corrupted template, you need to generate a new one. CloudStack has a lot of global configurations, and timeouts are a large set of them. I believe they are there to make sure CloudStack works with all sort of infrastructure, small, large, fast, slow, and there are different expectations. Somebody wants an instance to be deployed in a couple of seconds. Some infrastructure are slow. Maybe some zones are slow. They're OK to wait a little while. So depending on your scenario, your instance deployment or any other operation could fail you timeouts. The default timeouts in CloudStack, I believe, are sufficient enough to complete your operations. However, if you think your operation would have completed it later, in a few minutes later, you could update these timeouts. So the operation would complete. But still, I would say identify the subtask. You have to go through the logs. It takes time. Identify what is causing this delay. If you think in your infrastructure, this operation used to work faster, instance deployment, for example, and identify what is the delay, such as copying the template, some cloning operation or so, starting the virtual machine, or configuring your network. Identify the subtask and maybe investigate your underlying platform hypervisor, and you need to review and fix that. Most of the CloudStack instance deployment, you will have a network with a virtual router. Since CloudStack is designed to configure as expected, to configure the network first and then start the instance, any issues with your virtual router could affect your instance deployment. So what all could happen with the virtual router? After all, virtual router is in a virtual machine running your infrastructure managed by CloudStack itself. It's a Debian appliance, right? There could be scenarios where your virtual router is unresponsive. Your underlying host is slow. Hardware issues could be, and there are scenarios where your virtual router file system has filled up, so management server cannot run those network services configuration scripts on the virtual router. I remember some package updates on virtual router, I believe HA proxy or so, and I have seen bad changes in the Python scripts or shell scripts, writing lots of log files and filling with the virtual router. And your virtual router could go unreachable from the management server due to different reasons. Any underlying storage issues with the primary storage where the virtual router is running could result in the virtual router going unresponsive, crashing, and it affects not only your current instance deployment, all of your network as well. And there could be bugs in the CloudStack that could affect virtual router specifically as well. So how do we overcome this situation, right? You have console access to the virtual router, access the console, identify what is causing that. You need to spend time, definitely. And depending on the either of scenario, it could be something else, you can mitigate it. You restarting your network with cleanup at times helps, it requires downtime, not for everybody. If it's something totally different, you might want to identify and fix that issue or report a bug. So I have covered 15 common scenarios that I could list. So, over to you. Any questions?
We don't have any. Just use your voice. Go ahead. Does it work now? Okay.
Just one thing I want to mention is we struggled at the beginning at the huge amount of global settings. So don't be afraid, just keep them default and go, maybe take your time, go one by one. Now it's a little bit better, no, not a little bit, it's by far better structured. But this was also a complication when we started using CloudStack.
Yeah, correct, I agree with that.
Any more? By the way, I have one question online. So.
Jitin, I see you spoke about the job timeout, right? Recently we saw an issue.
Yeah.
But I really now don't know how to mitigate that. Like we have so many tables, right? Sync queue tables, job queue tables and all this. So my question is if we can really improve that, maybe have a timeout on top of timeout.
Well, there is one way I can think of. So different operations, in the infrastructure requires different time. Even if your hardware is good, everything infrastructure is good. For example, we have a good example here: snapshot backup for full backups, right? That takes more time. So how I believe we have identified is we have a specific timeout for that.
No, my question is about the job queues.
Job queues, yeah.
Job queues, every time when we get the timeout issue, we don't have anything solution apart from changing the database, right?
In the job queues, I believe it's due to the stale jobs there. I don't think, I'm not sure that is due to timeout. I'm not really sure. I mean, long pending.
Operations and those will get timeout and they will fail.
Mm.
But even to get the next instance up and running, we have to clear the job queue.
Yeah, this chance.
Job queue, I believe we'll have to investigate that. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the online question. You will be after the online question. Yes. Any mitigation recommendations, suggestions on deployment failures other than going into error message and logs pointing to a specific resource?
I don't, I don't think there is another way. This is what I do. instance deployment A or B, I look at the logs. Yeah.
So the answer is a definite no.
Sometimes I find it also helpful instead of instead of reading all the logs and trying to find out where is the error, just paste that in ChatGPT. And it's
Nice one.
You'll be surprised. No, you'll be surprised. Like 80-90%, it gets somewhere in the right direction.
Yeah. That is possible. Yes. I believe Kiran has a session on looking at the logs with Elasticsearch. That could be one option.
Do you think CloudStack can be improved, enhanced to be able to detect or maybe even recover from some of these errors? For example, the VR being unreachable, I think that could be done, or the file system being full, or something else maybe.
I think it would depend on case-by-case scenarios. We cannot. I don't know how to address that upfront, but looking at the type of issue that we see, we may have to like we do for any sort of issues, we need to address specifically, I believe.
I think we have a feature for that. The router checks, you can define which one will trigger reboot and rebuild on the router.
Andrea, can you please on the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, apologies. So I'm just saying I think that we actually have a feature that will do this, which is a virtual router health checks, where you can actually define which specific health checks, when triggered, when they are off, let's say, the expected state, they actually will trigger the rebuild of the virtual router, which actually was just a good reminder for me myself when you asked that question. So that's a great question, yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good use of that feature.
Any other questions? You have question then?
There's a follow-up question online from Suresh, by the way. Is there any plan to create auto self-healing functionality in CloudStack, at least from some known issues? I can answer part of that. There is a PR out for retry migration, which is an example, but I don't think we can answer that in a very generic way.
Yeah, but like health check, which is sort of a monitoring that we have, similar, we could improve and avoid issues. But, such as components that are critical, like virtual router, making sure they are in a good shape, checking the health, monitoring it to some extent.
Thank you, Jitin. Any other questions from the room? If not, round of applauses. Oh, wait. Hold on. One more question before the applauses.
It's not really a question, but just to add on top of all the VR diagnostics things. So, sorry if I missed it, but as far as helping to diagnose and to figure out what's wrong, there's also the feature to run diagnostics and get diagnostics from the VR, which gets you all the configuration from the VR file, all the files, and you can see what are the DNS, what is the everything that like agent properties, things like that. So,
yeah, absolutely, that is a helpful feature. Yeah.
And now, round of applauses for Jitin.